When my sister and I were still in our mother's womb, our grandfather arranged 2 childhood engagements for us. One was to Ethan, the grandson of his late comrade-in-arms. The other was to Nathan, the son of a wealthy businessman. We were originally going to draw lots. My sister would marry Nathan, and I would marry Ethan. But who would have thought my sister found Nathan not handsome enough and insisted on marrying Ethan instead? I had no choice but to take her place and marry Nathan. After we got married, the Nathan family's business flourished, and as the young madam of the Nathan household, I became more and more admired, glamorous, and successful. My sister, after marrying Ethan, discovered he was just an ordinary junior military officer, rigid, dull, and broke. Watching me live so well, she grew resentful. At our grandfather's birthday banquet, she stabbed me to death, screaming furiously that Nathan should have been her man, that I had stolen her life, and that she hated me. A sharp, searing pain burst through my abdomen. I looked down and saw her hand, clutching the handle of a fruit knife, buried entirely in my stomach. The music of the birthday banquet and the cheerful laughter of the guests continued in the background. No one noticed the tragedy playing out in this quiet corner. "Nathan should have been mine. You stole my life. I hate you," she screamed, her eyes wild with a madness I had never seen before. She yanked the knife out in one swift motion, and blood sprayed across the pink dress she had carefully chosen. I collapsed to the ground, my vision starting to blur. The last thing I saw was her twisted smile, and Nathan's panicked figure running toward me. When I opened my eyes again, we had both returned to the day of our 20th birthdays, the very day Ethan and Nathan were to visit with marriage proposals. This time, my sister rushed to say she wanted to marry Nathan. With a smug look, she told me, "Now it's my turn to marry the rich and powerful one. You can spend your life miserable with that cold, penniless loser." "Hannah, wake up. Ethan and Nathan are almost here." My mom's voice jolted me awake. I was sitting at my vanity in my room, staring into the mirror at my 20-year-old face. My fingers trembled as I reached down to touch my stomach. No wound, no pain. "Mom, is today my 20th birthday?" I asked, my voice tight. "Silly girl, are you so excited about your birthday that you're confused?" Mom laughed as she adjusted my collar. "Come downstairs, your grandfather is waiting." I pinched my arm. The sharp pain confirmed it. This wasn't a dream. I had been reborn. I was back on the day when everything changed. Downstairs, Grandpa was drinking tea with my dad. My sister, now dolled up and dressed to the nines, was already sitting on the sofa, perfectly made up. When she saw me, she gave me a loaded look. "Hannah," she said sweetly, "today's the big day. We're choosing our future husbands. And I already know who I want." My heart skipped a beat. That tone, that look. My sister had been reborn too. The doorbell rang. Mom led 2 young men into the living room. On the left was Ethan, in a crisp military uniform, his features clear and upright. On the right was Nathan, impeccably dressed in a sharp suit, a luxury watch gleaming on his wrist. Grandpa grinned and said, "These are the 2 granddaughters I always talk about, Hannah and Bella. Years ago I arranged engagements with old Ethan's grandfather. Today it's finally time to make good on that promise." According to what had happened in my past life, we were supposed to draw lots next to decide who would marry whom. But this time, Bella spoke up immediately. "Grandpa, I want to marry Nathan." Everyone was stunned. Bella walked straight over to Nathan and easily linked her arm through his. "It was love at first sight for me. I only want to marry you," she said. Nathan looked a bit uncomfortable but still managed a polite smile. Grandpa turned to me. "Hannah, then you'll—" "I'd be happy to," I cut him off, walking directly toward Ethan. He stood straight and tall, his eyes clear and calm as he looked at me. A flicker of resentment passed across Bella's face before it quickly shifted back to smug satisfaction. She leaned toward me and whispered, "This time, I get the rich, powerful man. You'll just have to live a miserable life with that broke, icy guy." I looked her in the eye, my voice steady. "I wish you happiness." Ethan gave me a crisp, standard military salute. "Miss Hannah, I'll do everything I can to make you happy." His gaze was so sincere, it sent a tremor through my heart. He was nothing like how Bella had described him in our past life. Rigid, boring, and unremarkable. After the engagement ceremony, both families began planning the weddings. Bella was busy flaunting the lavish betrothal gifts the Nathan family had sent, while I quietly started learning more about Ethan's background. The Carter family wasn't wealthy, but they were known for their integrity and strong values. My mom told me that Ethan had already become a company commander at such a young age. His future was promising. My dad added that Ethan's father had passed away early, and he'd been raised by his mother alone. It was said that Mrs. Carter was upright, principled, and highly respected in their community. That was a far cry from what Bella had complained about in our previous life, claiming Ethan was a poor soldier from a backward family. The wedding was set for next month. Bella spent her days getting fitted for an extravagant designer gown, while I chose something simple and elegant. Whenever she bragged about the latest luxury items the Nathan family bought her, I would just smile and say nothing. "Aren't you jealous, Hannah?" she finally asked one day, unable to contain herself. I looked out the window at the sunlight streaming through. "Everyone has a different definition of happiness," she scoffed. "You'll understand just how important money is when you're stuck in that tiny old apartment doing laundry and cooking all day." On the wedding day, sunlight filtered through the stained glass of the church, casting soft colors onto the red carpet. I stood in front of the mirror as my mother adjusted my veil. Unlike Bella's bejeweled six-figure wedding gown, I had chosen a simple satin dress, adorned only with a soft, elegant floral embroidery around the waist. The Carter family kept things modest, but every detail was thoughtful and respectful. My mom tucked a fresh lily into my hair. "Ethan asked what flower you liked. He had this flown in from Kunming this morning." The delicate fragrance of the white petals was refreshing and comforting. When the church doors opened, I took my father's arm and walked down the aisle. Ethan stood tall at the altar, his military uniform sharply pressed, shoulder lines so crisp they looked like they could slice paper. When he turned and saw me, his eyes lit up like stars sinking into the sea. "You look beautiful today," he whispered, his voice trembling slightly, not out of formality, but from something deeper. His gaze was so focused, it was as if the whole world had disappeared and I was the only one left. Even the tips of his ears were blushing red. The ceremony was simple and solemn. Ethan gently slipped a graceful platinum ring onto my finger, the inside engraved with our initials. As we exchanged rings, I noticed a thin layer of calluses on his palm, marks left by years of firearm training. "I will protect you with my life," he said during our vows, his thumb softly brushing the back of my hand. Suddenly, a commotion broke out in the back of the church. Bella stormed in, wearing her extravagant wedding gown, followed by the Nathan family's wedding motorcade, 10 identical black Mercedes-Benzes. "Sorry I'm late, sis," she said in a sickeningly sweet voice. The Nathan sent 10 cars for the bridal escort, but the traffic was terrible. She deliberately waved her wrist, showing off the jade bracelet. "A family heirloom from my mother-in-law. She insisted I wear it today." Gasps rippled through the crowd. I noticed Mrs. Carter frowning slightly, but Ethan only smiled at me calmly, as if this entire scene had nothing to do with us. After the ceremony, Bella and Nathan paraded around the banquet hall, flaunting her 3-carat diamond ring from table to table. Ethan and I quietly sat at the main table. He patiently peeled shrimp for me, dipping them in vinegar before placing them on my plate. "You don't have to do that," I said, a little embarrassed. "I'm used to taking care of people in the army," he said with a soft smile. "And now, you're the only one in my home. I need to take even better care of you for the Carters." There were only 15 tables at our wedding banquet, but every dish had been carefully prepared. Mrs. Carter had made sure my favorite, steamed sea bass, was served first. It was clear she had done her homework. Bella's wedding, on the other hand, hosted 80 tables. I heard later that the leftovers filled 3 garbage bins behind the hotel kitchen. That night, we returned to our new home, an apartment assigned by the military. It was a 2-bedroom unit with simple but sturdy furnishings. Ethan came up behind me and wrapped his arms around my waist. "Sorry, this place is a bit small," he said softly. I turned around to look at him. "It's perfect. It faces south and gets great light." His eyes lit up. Suddenly, he reached up to the top of the wardrobe and pulled down a box. "I got you a surprise." Inside the box was a beautifully bound set of military history books. the very ones I had casually mentioned wanting to read some time ago. I looked up at him in surprise. He scratched his head and said, "I saved the note in my phone, thought it'd make a good wedding gift." The next morning, before sunrise, I was still half asleep when I caught the scent of eggs frying. Reaching out, I realized the bed beside me was empty. I tiptoed into the kitchen and found Ethan wearing an apron, carefully flipping eggs. A pot of warm milk sat on the stove. When he saw me, he fumbled a little and quickly turned off the heat. "Did I wake you? You're up early." "I'm used to waking at 5:30 in the army," he said with a sheepish smile as he plated the eggs. "I wanted to let you sleep a little longer." The eggs were golden and crispy on the outside, exactly the way I liked them. That's when I remembered how, during the wedding banquet, he had quietly observed me taking only fully cooked eggs. After breakfast, Ethan insisted on doing the dishes. Sunlight streamed through the gauzy kitchen curtains, casting soft light on his face. His jawline looked like it had been drawn with a fountain pen. He caught me staring and smiled. "I'm taking you to meet my mom today. She's been talking about making soup for you." His mother lived in an old house on the military base. As soon as we stepped inside, the rich scent of herbal chicken soup filled the air. She gently pulled me down to sit beside her, studying my face carefully. "Ethan didn't bully you, did he?" "Mom," Ethan muttered, ears turning red. "He's been wonderful," I said, unable to stop smiling. "He even made me breakfast this morning." Her eyes lit up. "This boy's been caring since he was little. When he was 8, he could cook noodles and take them to the hospital for his dad." Then she suddenly fell silent, her expression dimming for a moment. I later learned that Ethan's father had died from injuries sustained during a mission. Ethan's choice to join the military had been deeply influenced by him. That afternoon, his mother prepared a full table of dishes and kept piling food onto my plate. As we were leaving, she pressed a red cloth pouch into my hand. "This was passed down to me by Ethan's grandmother. It's yours now." Inside was a simple orange jade bracelet, warm and translucent, clearly worn often and well cared for. "It's not worth much," she said, a bit embarrassed. I slipped it on immediately. "It's beautiful, thank you, Mom." On the way home, Ethan held my hand tightly. At a red light, he suddenly spoke. "After my dad passed, my mom raised me on her own. She always said, a wife isn't a housekeeper. She's a partner, someone to face life together with." His words warmed me deeply. Just then, my phone buzzed. It was a photo from Bella. She stood on the spiral staircase of the Nathan family's villa, behind her a wall of luxury handbags. "Jealous, Hannah?" she wrote, followed by a smug emoji. I locked my screen without replying. Ethan was at a street vendor's cart nearby, seriously inspecting roasted chestnuts like he was performing an important military task. "You said last time you liked these," he said, handing me a warm paper bag. I peeled one open and bit into it. It was sweet and fragrant, the taste filling my mouth with warmth. That evening, while organizing my wedding keepsakes, I noticed that the inside of the bracelet Ethan's mother gave me had 4 delicate characters engraved: peace and joy. Outside, Ethan was hanging the laundry on the balcony. The moonlight outlined his figure gently and clearly. Ethan never missed a morning, up by 5:30 sharp. I decided to match his routine. When I pushed open the kitchen door, Ethan was pouring hot water into a thermos. He looked surprised. "You're up early." "I wanted to make breakfast for you," I said, tying on an apron and taking eggs from the fridge. His lips curled into a smile. He came up behind me and wrapped his arms around my waist. "Let me teach you. This old stove is tricky. Heat control's important." He placed his hand over mine, adjusting the burner knob. His breath brushed against my ear. In that moment, I couldn't help but remember how Nathan never once stepped into the kitchen. He always sat at the dining table, reading the paper, waiting for me to bring him coffee. My hands fumbled nervously as I tried to cook the eggs. The yolk broke apart, but Ethan ate every bite with relish. "You did better than me on your first try," he said cheerfully. I remembered how my first attempt at frying eggs back then had turned them into charcoal. After breakfast, he insisted on washing the dishes himself. "Weren't you going to the military base commissary to shop today? I'll drop you off on the way," he offered. On the way there, he told me in detail which stall had the freshest vegetables and which auntie sold the best cuts of meat. These little bits of information were things he had carefully remembered from each of his weekly trips home. After dropping Ethan off, I stood outside the commissary and took a deep breath. "You must be Captain Carter's wife," one of the smiling vendors said as she handed me a cloth bag. "Little Ethan called yesterday and told me you'd be coming. He asked me to save you a fresh bass." I stood there stunned. Ethan had thought even this far ahead. That afternoon, I followed a recipe on my phone and managed to make one dish and one soup. I'd added too much salt, but the sense of accomplishment was stronger than anything I'd ever felt, even dining at a Michelin-starred restaurant in my previous life. After lunch, I opened my notebook and started jotting down everything I remembered about the military system from before. In 2015, there would be a large-scale military drill. In 2016, new equipment would be piloted. Suddenly, my phone rang. Bella's overly cheerful voice came through. "Sis, I was doing a spa nearby your military district, so I thought I'd stop by and visit you." An hour later, a red Porsche pulled up in front of the family housing building. Bella stepped out, teetering on 10-centimeter heels, her eyes sweeping over our modest home. Her lips twitched. "Nathan insisted on buying me this car. Said it was a wedding gift." She jingled the LV keychain hanging from the keys. "Sis, you don't even have a housekeeper." I handed her a cup of tea. "I'm used to it. It feels comfortable this way." She suddenly leaned in. "Is Ethan treating you well?" Even under her thick foundation, I could still see faint dark circles under her eyes. "He's great," I replied, pointing to the vase of fresh sunflowers on the windowsill. "He brings home little things every day." Her smile faltered for a split second, then she quickly recovered and gave a smug grin. "The Nathan family just bought me a full set of jade jewelry. They say it's a family heirloom." Her phone rang. When she saw the caller ID, her fingers trembled slightly. I have to go. My mother-in-law scheduled a mahjong game." She stood up quickly, knocking over the teacup with her Chanel bag. When I walked her to the door, I noticed a red scratch on the back of her neck. It looked like a rope burn. She caught my glance and quickly adjusted her collar. "The cat scratched me," she said casually. Watching her retreat in such a rush, I fell into thought. In our past life, around this time, Nathan had already started seeing other women behind her back. That evening, Ethan came home with a request. "A few of my teammates are coming over for dinner tomorrow. Is that okay?" "Of course," I said right away, pulling out my notebook. "Any dietary restrictions? Favorites?" He looked surprised as he scanned the list of notes I'd taken. "How'd you know Captain Lee likes spicy food?" "You mentioned it once," I said with a small lie. In truth, I'd overheard it at a military banquet in our previous life. The next morning, I got up early and began prepping according to my notes. As the braised pork simmered on the stove, Ethan walked in with 3 of his fellow soldiers. "Good afternoon, ma'am," the youngest among them said with a sharp salute. "Brother Ethan's always bragging about your cooking." I smiled and invited them to sit. The skills I'd honed entertaining guests at the Nathan household now came in handy. I remembered every name and rank, refilled drinks and tea at just the right time, and kept quiet during their serious conversations. When it was time to serve the food, I made sure to consider everyone's taste preferences. "Where did you find such a wife, Ethan?" After a few rounds of drinks, the oldest one, Captain Lee, clapped Ethan's shoulder with admiration. "She reads people better than the political office director." Ethan's ears turned bright red, but his eyes sparkled. I knew this dinner meant a lot to him. Captain Lee was one of the key evaluators for the upcoming promotion assessments. After the guests left, Ethan helped me clean up the dishes. "Thank you for everything today," he said softly. "Captain Lee said your food is better than the officer's guest house." I laughed as I dried my hands. I used to help my mom host guests at home all the time. That weekend at the commissary, I ran into Captain Lee's wife, Auntie Wang. "Oh, Hannah. Old Lee hasn't stopped praising you since that dinner," she said warmly, taking my hand. She lowered her voice and added, "The district has an inspection coming up next month to check training performance. How's little Ethan preparing for it?" "He's been working overtime every day," I answered with a smile. I pretended to be worried. "I just don't know what the upper command is focusing on this time." Auntie Wang lowered her voice. Word is, this time they're focusing on night combat and information-based equipment operations. Later that day, back at home, I casually mentioned, I heard from someone at the commissary that 3rd Company's been training for nighttime shooting drills. Their scores are apparently really good. Ethan paused thoughtfully and gave a small nod. That night, he came home late and told me he'd stayed behind to run night tactical exercises with his unit. A month later, after the inspection was over, Ethan was recognized as the model officer for night combat operations. At the celebration banquet, his direct superior patted him on the shoulder and said, "You were well prepared, right on point with the inspection's focus." Ethan turned to look at me, his eyes filled with both curiosity and gratitude. I lowered my head and focused on gnawing a rib bone. That night, before bed, he suddenly asked, "How did you know they'd focus on night operations this time?" "I guessed," I said, setting down my book. "Didn't the district just get new night vision equipment recently? They'd want to test its effectiveness." He stared at me for a few seconds, then chuckled. "Hannah, you're full of surprises." Outside, the moonlight was soft like flowing water. I listened to his steady breathing beside me, but my thoughts drifted far away. Bella was probably lying in the Nathan family's massive king-sized bed. But was there anyone beside her? At 3 a.m., I jolted awake, drenched in cold sweat. In my dream, Bella held a blood-stained fruit knife, and behind her, Nathan stood sneering in the shadows. The moonlight outside was ghostly pale. Ethan lay next to me, sleeping soundly, his breath calm and even. I quietly got out of bed and went to the study. Turning on the desk lamp, I opened my notebook. Half of it already filled with important events I remembered from my past life. The drastic steel price drop in Q3 of 2015, personnel changes in the military district at the end of the year, a testing accident with new equipment. I circled one particular line: the regional military competition in September 2015. The next morning over breakfast, I asked nonchalantly, "Is training going smoothly these days?" Ethan set down his soy milk. "There's a confrontation drill next week. I've been studying topographical maps. My hometown has a lot of hilly terrain." I handed him a napkin. "I used to hike the mountains as a kid, know a few hidden trails." His eyes lit up. "Really?" Using memory, I sketched out the terrain behind Ethan's hometown and marked several herbalists' paths. "This creek dries up in September. You could use it as a hidden passage," I pointed out. "But be careful on the eastern slope. There's a loose rock section that can give away movement." Ethan studied the map for a long time before looking up. "Hannah, how do you know all this?" "I joined the orienteering club in college," I lied with a smile. "And my dad's a military history buff. We have a lot of books like this at home." 3 days later, Ethan didn't get home until very late. His eyes were gleaming with excitement. "We used your route today for a flanking maneuver. Took out the red team's command post. The brigade commander praised us on the spot." I helped him out of his mud-covered combat uniform. "Must have just been good luck." "No, it wasn't," he said, gripping my hand. "That warning about the rocky slope? You were right. There were red team sentries stationed there. We circled around from the downstream route." The kettle started to whistle sharply. I turned to shut off the stove, hiding the smile spreading across my face. That weekend at the commissary, Auntie Wang pulled me aside mysteriously. "I heard little Ethan did exceptionally well in the drill. Command's considering him to lead the cross-regional military competition." "Really?" I nearly dropped the basket of eggs I was carrying. On the way home, my phone rang. Bella's voice sounded thick, like she had a stuffy nose. "Sis, are you busy?" "Just finished grocery shopping. What's up?" There was a pause on the other end. Then she said, "Nathan hasn't come home for 3 days. She suddenly started crying. "My mother-in-law says I'm useless, can't even keep my husband around." I stood on the roadside under a sycamore tree, watching sunlight filter through the leaves, casting dappled shadows across the pavement. "Maybe his company is busy with a new project?" "I wouldn't know," Bella sobbed. "They keep saying something about funding rounds and equity agreements. I don't understand a word of it." "Sis, how did you used to?" She cut herself off mid-sentence. I tightened my grip on the phone. She almost let it slip. She wanted to ask how I had dealt with this kind of thing in my past life. "Pay more attention to his work," I said flatly. At the very least, remember the names of his colleagues and what project he's currently working on. Who can remember all that? Bella said irritably. Yesterday, his secretary called. I mentioned Mr. Wong by accident, but apparently it was someone named Lee. Nathan yelled at me for embarrassing him. When I got home, Ethan was in the study going over strategy materials for the upcoming competition. I made him a cup of tea and set it by his hand. He naturally pulled me down to sit beside him. "Help me look at this tactical setup," he said. That simple act of trust warmed my heart. On the last day of September, Ethan was officially appointed as the team leader for the military district competition. During the announcement, the political commissar specifically praised his innovative thinking in tactical planning. At the celebration banquet, Ethan's direct superior, Colonel Chen, was flushed from drinking. "Ethan, something's clicked with you lately, huh?" He laughed. "That flanking tactic in the last drill and this new multi-unit coordination plan, both sharp ideas." Ethan glanced at me and smiled. "I have a good woman at home." Colonel Chen patted my shoulder. "I've heard all about you, Hannah. Captain Lee says your braised pork is out of this world. I'll have to try it myself one day." As everyone laughed, my phone buzzed. It was a photo from Bella. She sat alone at a high-end restaurant with 2 full-place settings in front of her. "Anniversary dinner," the message read. "Nathan said he had a last-minute meeting." She added a crying emoji. I locked the screen. In my past life, Nathan really did have a meeting today, just not a business one. He used their anniversary as an excuse to meet his mistress at a hotel. I had pretended not to know, even prepared a gift, and waited for him until late into the night. On the way home, Ethan suddenly said, "The competition next month is in Nanjing. Family members can come, if you want to." "Of course," I answered without hesitation. That night, after Ethan fell asleep, I opened my notebook again. Flipping a few pages ahead, one entry had been marked in red ink. November 2015, Lu Group's capital chain crisis. Nathan turns to Zhou Investments for help. I gently closed the notebook. Bella's hard days were only just beginning. The desk lamp cast a soft, golden glow on Ethan's profile. In front of him lay the 7th revision of his battle plan. The interregional competition was just 2 weeks away, and he had only been sleeping 4 hours a night for the past 3 days. I quietly set down a cup of honey grapefruit tea. He looked up and rubbed his tired, bloodshot eyes. "Did I wake you?" I pulled up a chair beside him. "Where are you stuck in the plan?" He pointed at a section on the map. "Red team will definitely place forces here. A frontal assault would be too costly, but the alternate route would take too long." I studied the terrain. "This area," I pointed at the western edge, "is prone to landslides, right?" Ethan paused, surprised. "How did you know?" "There was a landslide during a drill last year, wasn't there?" I replied lightly. "Just a hunch." "If Red Team expects you to take the long way around, they'll probably set up an ambush there." Ethan suddenly shot to his feet, his chair screeching loudly against the floor. He pulled me into a tight hug. "Hannah, you're a genius." He smelled faintly of pine and sweat, his heartbeat strong and fast. The next morning, Ethan headed straight to the command post to revise the plan. While cleaning the study, I found a note he had left on the desk. "I might be home late tonight. Don't wait for dinner. P.S. Mrs. Chen invited you to her tea gathering." There was even a crooked little smiley face drawn in the corner. I couldn't help but smile. It felt so much more genuine than Nathan's cold, templated work messages. Colonel Chen's home was in the officer's residence building. When I arrived, 5 or 6 military wives were already seated in the living room. As soon as I entered, a middle-aged woman with permed hair waved warmly. "You must be Hannah. My husband talks about you all the time." "Nice to meet you, Mrs. Zhao," I said, addressing her correctly. My knowledge of military families from my past life at the Lu household was finally coming in handy. The conversation flowed from children's education to district gossip. I chimed in at just the right moments, engaged, but not overbearing. When the topic shifted to the upcoming military district anniversary celebration, Mrs. Zhou suddenly turned to me. "Hannah, what kind of program is Ethan's unit preparing?" "They're rehearsing now," I replied smoothly. "They're adapting the competition strategy into a tactical skit." In reality, Ethan hadn't mentioned any such thing. In my past life, there had indeed been a performance showcase at the military district's anniversary celebration. The winners often left a strong impression on the higher-ups. As soon as I got home, I texted Ethan about it. He replied quickly, "How did you know there'd be a performance showcase? The official notice just came out this morning." "Just a guess," I answered. "Don't they hold one every year?" That evening, Ethan came home with a thick stack of documents. "The political office is requiring every competing unit to prepare a program," he said. "Perfect timing. We can adapt the military competition scenario into a skit." He looked at me with a complicated expression. "Hannah, sometimes you're so accurate it's scary." A week later, during the performance showcase, Ethan's unit's skit won the Best Creativity Award. After the performance, a white-haired general came up to shake Ethan's hand. "You've got ideas, young man. Who designed this program?" "It was the collective effort of our unit," Ethan replied humbly. "But my wife contributed quite a bit too." Very good, the general said, patting his shoulder. "A husband and wife working together can accomplish anything." He looked thoroughly pleased. The evening banquet was held at the district guest house. I chose a navy blue dress, elegant without being showy. When Ethan saw me, his eyes lit up. "You look beautiful." At the banquet, I noticed several military wives subtly observing my manners. "Ethan's wife has such poise," Vice Commander Zhao commented to Colonel Chen, his voice just loud enough for me to hear. As he spoke, a stir rippled through the banquet hall. A familiar figure staggered inside. Bella wore a revealing evening gown, her cheeks unnaturally flushed. Behind her stood Nathan and a balding middle-aged man. "This is our company's latest investment proposal, Mr. Wang." Nathan's polished voice floated across the room. Bella's eyes were unfocused, the wine glass in her hand trembling. The moment she spotted me, her eyes widened in shock. Nathan finally noticed us too. His face immediately darkened. He yanked Bella toward him roughly. "Mr. Wang, let's talk over there." Bella stumbled and her wine glass shattered on the marble floor. The sharp sound drew more stares. She tried to say something, but Nathan shot her a vicious glare that made her fall silent. "Isn't that the heir to the Lu Group?" Colonel Chen's wife whispered. "Bringing his drunk wife to a business meeting. What is he thinking?" I tightened my grip on my own glass. In my past life, by this point, I had already started accompanying Nathan to meet clients. There was even a time I drank so much I ended up with a bleeding stomach. Ethan gently touched my hand. "Do you want to check on her?" I shook my head. Bella chose this path. She has to walk it to the end. After the banquet, Vice Commander Zhao asked Ethan to stay back for a private conversation. While I waited in the corridor, Mrs. Zhao came over and whispered, "Word is, after the competition, there's a spot for advanced study at the National Defense University." Commander Zhao really thinks highly of Ethan. My heart skipped a beat. Normally, people selected for that program moved up the ranks quickly afterward. "Thank you for the tip," I said sincerely. She patted my hand. "You're so much better than those wives who just flaunt brand names. Colonel Chen told me Ethan consults with you on every plan these days." "I just offer a few ideas," I replied modestly. When Ethan came out, his eyes were shining. "Vice Commander Zhao wants me to write a paper on information-based warfare." On the ride home, he couldn't stop talking about his ideas for the paper. Late that night, my phone buzzed. It was a voice message from Bella. The background was filled with the sound of vomiting. "Sis, I can't take it anymore," she cried. "He told me to keep that disgusting old man company." I stared at the ceiling for a long time. Eventually I replied, "Do you need me to call you a car home?" "No," she sniffled. "My mother-in-law said if I mess up another deal, she'll cut off my credit card." I set my phone aside. Outside the window, a pale moon hung over the military base's watchtower, cold and bright. The day the acceptance letter from the National Defense University arrived, I was at the sink, dry heaving. A week of morning sickness had already made me lose 3 pounds. My face in the mirror was as pale as paper. "Hannah!" Ethan's voice came from outside the bathroom door, followed by urgent knocking. "Open up." I wiped my mouth and opened the door. He stood there holding a large craft envelope, his eyes shining with excitement. I got in. Vice Commander Zhao called personally to confirm. I didn't even have time to respond before another wave of nausea surged up. Ethan's smile froze as he gently held my shoulders. "Is it?" Those 2 red lines on the test stick? His guess was confirmed. Ethan immediately knelt on the bathroom tiles, pressing his face against my still flat stomach. He wrapped his arms around my waist like a child who'd just been handed a bag of candy. "Double blessing," he murmured. When he looked up, the corners of his eyes were slightly wet. "I'm going to tell the political commissar today. I'm withdrawing from the program." "Don't talk nonsense," I tugged on his ear. "This is a rare opportunity. But I don't want to leave you alone." His warm palm rested gently over my lower abdomen. "My mom can come take care of me," I cut him off. "And if not, we can hire a nanny. Ethan Carter, if you dare throw away this opportunity, I'll take the baby and move back to my parents' house." He stared at me for a few seconds before suddenly bursting into laughter. "Hannah, you're adorable when you threaten people." In the end, we struck a deal. He would attend the training program, but had to return home every weekend. His mom would move in and stay with me until the training was over. When Mrs. Carter arrived, she brought 3 hens and a bundle of traditional herbs, instantly turning the kitchen into an herbal soup kitchen. The whole apartment smelled of angelica root and goji berries. "After Ethan's father passed, I relied on herbal remedies to get through it," she said, as she skimmed foam from the broth. "Now you're eating for 2, you need the best nutrition." I sat on a low stool peeling garlic. Sunlight filtered through the gauzy kitchen curtains, casting a warm glow on the silver strands at her temples. After Ethan left for training, he sent me texts every day, sometimes photos of his class notes, other times complaints about the inedible cafeteria food. Every evening during our video calls, the first thing he asked was always, "How many times did you throw up today?" On weekends when he came home, he brought stacks of military theory books and would read aloud from them before bed. "For the baby," he said. One late night I woke up to find him softly stroking my belly, whispering, "Daddy's going to protect you and Mommy, no matter what." Halfway through the program, Ethan was selected to represent the school in a joint military exercise. The night before his deployment, he stayed up organizing materials. As I handed him a glass of warm milk, I said, "What if you added an electronic warfare component to this plan?" He raised an eyebrow. "You understand electronic warfare?" "I've read a few articles," I said nonchalantly. In truth, one of Nathan's past mistresses had been an expert in electronic operations, and she never stopped bragging at the dinner parties. Ethan, deep in thought, began modifying the plan. 2 weeks later, the blue team, his unit, won by a landslide. His electronic interference squad was rated as a key strategic asset. "The vice principal spoke to me today," Ethan said excitedly over video call. "There's a chance I'll be assigned directly to the command department after graduation." I rubbed my now noticeably swollen belly and smiled. The next day, at a prenatal checkup, the doctor grinned and said, "Twins. Healthy and strong." I immediately texted Ethan. He replied with a flood of exclamation marks, then a single line, "I've submitted a request to transfer back to my original post." "Are you crazy?" I called him right away. "The command department's too busy," he said, sounding almost aggrieved. "I want to be there when the babies are born. I want to watch them grow up. My dad died early. I know what it's like to grow up without a father." Just then, a bugle call echoed from his end. He quickly said, "I love you," and hung up. I held the phone in my hand, my heart soft and aching like sugar melting in warm water. When Mrs. Carter found out, her eyes turned red. Just like his father, so stubborn. By the 6th month, my belly had grown enormous. Ethan had finished his training and returned home, now walking with me every evening without fail. The older women in the residential compound all praised him. "Captain Carter is a model husband," they said with admiration. One weekend afternoon, the doorbell rang. I opened the door to find Bella standing there, her belly even bigger than mine. Behind her were 3 little girls, quiet and timid. "Sis," she said, her face pale and waxy, a dark bruise under one eye. "Can I borrow some money?" I hurried them inside. The 3 girls sat stiffly at the edge of the sofa, but their eyes were locked on the fruit platter. "What happened?" I asked gently, handing each of the girls an apple. Bella's tears suddenly burst forth like a broken dam. "The Liu family is finished. Nathan's investments failed, and now debt collectors show up at our door every day. My mother-in-law said if I don't give birth to a boy this time." Her voice choked and trailed off. I noticed faint bruises circling her wrists, marks that looked like they'd been left by restraints. "Did Nathan hit you?" I asked softly. Bella's whole body flinched. She instinctively shielded her stomach. He's just under a lot of pressure." By the time Ethan came home, Bella had already left with the kids. I had given her some cash, which she nervously stuffed into her undershirt like she was stealing it. "I heard about the Lou group," Ethan said as he took off his military jacket. "They took on private fundraising. Now the Capital chain has collapsed. It's a huge mess." I leaned back on the sofa, the twins kicking wildly inside me. In my past life, the Lou family business had been thriving at this time, because I'd secretly helped broker their rescue deal with Zhao Investments. Ethan crouched down and pressed his ear to my belly. "No matter what happens," he said, "as long as we're together, that's enough." I stroked his short, bristly hair. "Yeah, being together is enough. We don't need luxury homes, fancy cars, or meaningless reputation." Ethan's transfer order arrived in my 7th month. He was officially promoted to Regimental Chief of Staff and granted the rank of Major. On the day the order was announced, the whole regiment applauded. Colonel Chen laughed. "Once those twins are born, we'll throw a proper celebration." The day before Bella's due date, she called again, crying so hard her words were barely coherent. "It's another girl." Nathan didn't even look at her. He just walked away. "My mother-in-law is demanding a divorce." As I listened to the newborn crying on the other end of the line, my chest tightened. Then, one early morning, labor pains hit me suddenly. Ethan reacted like a firefighter. He grabbed the hospital bag in seconds. Mrs. Carter insisted on bringing a jar of ginseng soup. "Giving birth is a battle. You'll need your strength." Outside the delivery room, I heard Ethan arguing with the doctor. "Prioritize the mother. If anything happens, save my wife first." 12 grueling hours later, our healthy boy-girl twins were born. Ethan's eyes were red as he cut the umbilical cords, then kissed me hard on the forehead. "Hannah, you're my hero." The nurse brought over the cleaned-up babies. The girl looked just like Ethan. The boy looked like me. Ethan cradled his daughter gently, brushing her tiny cheek with his finger. "Daddy's here," he whispered. During my hospital stay, Ethan learned to change diapers and make formula. One night, I woke up to find him bent over the crib, whispering, "Daddy will always protect you and Mommy." I swore to myself that when we were discharged, we'd start anew. On the day we came home, there was a big red banner hanging in front of the family housing building. "Congratulations to Chief of Staff Carter on the birth of twins." The hallway was stacked with baby gifts from neighbors, including handmade baby shoes. Mrs. Carter gave us the master bedroom and moved into the nursery. "You two need the space for rest and work," she said. "At my age, sleeping less is no big deal." Late at night, during feedings, I often saw Ethan quietly tiptoe into the nursery, only to return with a proud grin. "Mom slept through it. I changed the diaper myself. She didn't even stir." The twins' 1-month celebration was set for Army Day, August 1st. Ethan said it was perfect timing, a true double blessing. The invitations had barely gone out when I received a call from Bella. "Sis?" Her voice was faint, like it came from very far away. "Can I come?" "Just me. The kids are too loud." "Of course," I paused. "Are you okay?" There was a long silence on the other end. The Lou family's bankrupt. Nathan's gone. After I hung up, I looked at the 2 sleeping babies in their crib. We had started from the same place, but ended up in completely different worlds. Fate was never a simple multiple-choice question. We held the twin celebration in the military dining hall. Ethan had asked the head cook to help, and they laid out 20 tables. I wore a loose-fitting red dress, holding our daughter, little Tang, in my arms. Ethan stood beside me at the entrance, proudly holding our son, little Zhao, as we welcomed each guest with joy. "What a lucky guy you are, Chief Carter." Ethan's fellow officers took turns coming over to see the babies, stuffing red envelopes into our hands as gifts. Ethan's grin stretched so wide it nearly reached his ears as he kept insisting, No, our daughter looks like her mom. It's our son who looks like me." Sunlight streamed through the glass windows of the dining hall, casting a warm glow over the red-clothed banquet tables. I gently rocked our baby girl in my arms. Her little cheeks were rosy, and once in a while she'd break into a toothless grin. Every time she smiled, Ethan would beam and say, "See? My little princess is smiling at me." Colonel Chen and his wife came over to offer their congratulations, each handing one of the babies a red envelope. "Ethan, looks like you've got it all. Career and family, both flourishing," the colonel said. Ethan had just opened his mouth to respond when a stir broke out at the entrance. Bella stood there in a wrinkled dress, clutching a cheap plastic bag. She was so thin her cheekbones jutted out sharply, making her eyes look unnaturally large, full of unease and envy. She walked over slowly, her voice rough and sandpaper-like. "This is a gift for the babies." Inside the plastic bag were 2 pairs of baby socks. The tags were still attached, but the fabric was clearly cheap. I accepted them and said gently, "Thank you. We'll definitely use these." Her eyes landed on the twins in my arms. Her lips trembled. "They're beautiful. A boy and a girl? You're so lucky," Ethan, ever gracious, said. "Come on in and have a seat. We're about to start." Bella scurried into the hall like a frightened rabbit. I noticed the soles of her shoes were coming apart, the heels worn down beyond repair. Once the banquet began, Ethan stood on stage holding our son. Dressed in his neatly pressed uniform with his shiny epaulets glinting under the lights, he said, "Thank you all for coming to celebrate the first month of our daughter and son." His voice cracked slightly. I don't know what I've done to deserve a wife like mine, or children this healthy and perfect." The hall erupted in applause. From the corner of my eye, I saw Bella sitting alone in the back, staring fixedly at Ethan on stage. Her fingers were clenched together so tightly that her knuckles had turned white. During the toasts, Bella suddenly sidled up next to me. I was feeding little Tang and looked up when she whispered, "Sis, Nathan ran." "What?" I asked, stunned. "His company went bankrupt," she said, her voice tight with rage. "He's buried in debt. Last week in the middle of the night, he packed his stuff and left. Didn't even leave a note." Her eyes glistened with tears, but the dominant emotion behind them was anger. I noticed a bruise around her neck, like someone had grabbed her. "Where are you living now?" I asked. "My mother-in-law?" Bella sneered. "That witch mortgaged the house. I'm staying with the kids in one of Nathan's old properties in the suburbs. No heating, nothing." I remembered how, in my past life, Nathan had also faced bankruptcy. I had pulled strings through Joe Investments to get him the funds to survive. Back then, he held me and said, "Marrying you was the best thing that ever happened to me." But soon after, he was in bed with his secretary. After the banquet, Bella lingered, hesitant to leave. When the last guest had gone, she suddenly dropped to her knees and clung to my leg. "Sis, please, lend me 100,000 yuan. The kids need to eat. They need to go to school." Startled, I nearly dropped the baby. Ethan rushed over to take little Tang from me. "Let's go talk over there," I told her quietly. "I don't have that much in cash," I said, helping her up. "And even if I did, the Liu family situation isn't something a small amount can fix." 50,000 then," she cried, clutching my hand so hard her nails dug into my skin. "I know Ethan just got promoted. You guys have money." In the end, I gave her 20,000 yuan and told her she didn't need to pay it back. As she grabbed the money, the way her eyes lit up reminded me of the moment, back in our past life, when she'd plunged a knife into me for this very same reason. "You're so damn lucky," she said, stuffing the bills into her bra. Her voice was bitter, venomous. "No matter who you marry, your life turns out perfect." Ethan drove her to the train station. When he came back, he said quietly, "She cried the whole way there. She said she regrets fighting you over Nathan." I didn't respond as I rocked little Joe in my arms, trying to calm his crying. Regret? The only thing she regretted was betting on the wrong man to make money. That night, I opened an education fund account for each of Bella's 5 daughters. I arranged automatic monthly deposits to ensure they would all have a chance at school. 3 months later, while I was buying formula in the baby section at the mall, I sensed someone following me. When I turned around, I spotted Bella ducking behind a shelf in a panic. "Come out," I said aloud to no one. She shuffled out slowly, holding her youngest daughter, thin as a kitten, crying with a voice barely audible. "Why are you following me?" I asked, then stuffed a few cans of formula into her cart. Her eyes turned red. "I went to the bank. I know it's you sending money for the kids." Her voice trembled. "Why? After everything I did to you?" "The kids are innocent," I said simply. Then I grabbed a few packs of diapers and tossed them in as well. Suddenly, she grabbed my wrist. Sis, Nathan's a monster. He took everything. My jewelry, even my wedding ring. I looked down at her rough, worn hands and was reminded of my past life, when Nathan had taken my jewelry piece by piece. He'd claimed they were gifts for clients' wives, when in reality they were for his mistress. You need to find a job, I said with a sigh. A friend of mine runs a daycare. I can refer you as a caregiver. Bella yanked her hand back like I'd burned her. Me? Serve other people's kids? I'm from the Liu family. The Liu family doesn't exist anymore, I said calmly. You need to eat. Your kids need to go to school. Her face twisted through several expressions before she forced out, I'll think about it. Then she hurried off without even saying thank you. When I got home, Ethan was reading a fairy tale to the twins. Little Tang drooled on his chest while Little Jaw stared intently at the illustrations. You're back. Ethan looked up with a smile. Zhao rolled over for the first time today. I set the formula down and kissed both of the babies. Ethan smelled of gentle soap and baby lotion, a scent so warm and reassuring. Hannah, Ethan said more seriously this time. I'm going on a work trip to Beijing next week. Might be gone for 2 weeks. I folded Little Tang's onesie. Mom's here to help. We'll be fine. It's for a Central Military Commission meeting, he said in a lower voice. There's a chance I'll be reassigned to a headquarters position. I looked at him, stunned. In my past life, that transfer had marked the start of a meteoric rise. That's good news, I said, trying to sound calm even as my heart raced. Ethan scratched his head. But it means living in Beijing full-time. I was thinking of turning it down. Don't be ridiculous. My voice rose sharply, startling little Zhao. I quickly patted him gently, softening my tone. Do you know how many people would kill for an opportunity like that? But the kids are still young. We'll move with you, I interrupted. Ethan, don't give up your career for the family. You'll just end up losing both. He stared at me for a long moment, then suddenly smiled. Hannah, sometimes I think you're more mature than I am. He placed the twins into their cradle and wrapped his arms around me. Then let's go to Beijing together. I leaned against his shoulder, breathing in that warm, familiar scent. Being together as a family was all that mattered. The appointment came sooner than expected. Ethan was promoted to deputy director of a division under the Central Military Commission, bypassing standard procedure. The announcement ceremony was held at the Defense Department itself. Vice Commander Zhao attended in person, clapping Ethan on the shoulder. 35 and already at deputy division level, there are few in the whole army who can match you. The celebration was hosted at the military district's guest house. I wore a tailored navy blue suit dress, my hair neatly tied back. Ethan stood tall beside me in full dress uniform, the stars on his epaulets gleaming brightly. People came over one after another to toast him. Somewhere along the way, the respectful Miss Yu had been replaced by Mrs. Carter. Comrade Hannah's contributions are no small thing, one retired general chuckled. I heard Deputy Director Carter's proposal on information-based warfare. Wasn't that your work? I gave a modest smile. I just helped proofread it for typos. In truth, the key ideas behind that proposal had come from a drunken conversation in my past life, between Nathan's mistress and a military insider. At the time, I just assumed that man was bragging. I never imagined that after being reborn, his drunken ramblings would become so useful. The banquet didn't end until late at night. Ethan had drunk a little too much and held my hand tightly the whole ride home. Hannah, without you, I wouldn't be where I am today. Outside the window, the lights of Beijing shimmered like a river of stars. Our new home was a 2-story detached house in the military compound. On moving day, Ethan's mom was in the courtyard holding little Zhao, directing soldiers as they arranged the furniture. Little Tang was lying on the freshly laid carpet, chewing on her teether. Mom, take a break. I handed her a cup of tea. She shook her head. These old bones can still move. Her eyes welled up as she looked at Ethan, who was on a ladder hanging the curtains. If only his father could have seen this day. Just then my phone rang, an unfamiliar number. When I picked up, it was Bella's oldest daughter, Tina. Auntie, Mommy's burning up and talking nonsense. I glanced at my busy family and lowered my voice. Did you take her to the hospital? No, we don't have the money for the deposit. Her voice trembled. The little ones are crying from hunger. Half an hour later, I stood in front of a crumbling house in the suburbs. The paint was peeling from the walls, and plastic sheets had been nailed over the broken windows. When I opened the door, the smell of mildew and urine hit me like a wave. Bella was lying on a yellowed mattress, her cheeks flushed with fever. The 5 girls huddled around her. Tina held the youngest in her arms, while the 3 in the middle huddled together for warmth. There was no heat, and the girls were dressed in thin clothes. Their little fingers were purple from the cold. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" I touched Bella's forehead. It was scorching hot. When she saw it was me, she suddenly burst into tears. "Sis, I was wrong. I never should have fought you." "Don't say that now." I took off my coat and wrapped the smallest girl in it. "Tina, get your mom's insurance card. We're going to the hospital." Bella struggled to sit up. "I don't have insurance. It's been lapsed for half a year." I called an ambulance immediately, and then had Ethan's driver come pick up the kids. Bella was hospitalized for 3 days. I hired a nurse to look after her, and temporarily moved the 5 girls into our guest rooms. "Let them stay," Ethan said as he came back from shopping, carrying bags of new clothes and backpacks for the kids. "We have enough space." I shook my head. "Bella won't agree." And sure enough, when Bella was discharged and saw her kids clean, well-fed, and sitting around our dining table, her face instantly darkened. "Sis, what's this supposed to mean?" "Mommy, Auntie gave us new backpacks," the youngest girl said innocently. Bella yanked her daughter to her side. "Shut up." Then she turned to me. "Don't think a little charity gives you the right to mock us." Ethan frowned and was about to speak, but I placed a hand over his. "The kids need to go to school. Tina's grades are good. She could test into a top middle school." "Don't you dare meddle," Bella shrieked, her voice hysterical. "Haven't you taken enough from me already? You stole my whole life." She grabbed the girls and stormed out without even taking their coats. The youngest looked back at me, her eyes filled with longing. "Let her cool off," Ethan sighed. "She'll come back when she thinks it through." But when Bella returned, things were even worse. It was snowing heavily that day. A soldier called from the gate to say there was a woman with children asking for me. Bella stood outside the sentry post, her down coat filthy and indistinguishable in color. The 5 girls clustered behind her like frightened chicks. As soon as she saw me, she fell to her knees in the snow. "Sis, please take us in. The landlord kicked us out." Ethan was at a meeting. I asked the soldier to help bring them inside. A hot bath, warm food, clean clothes. The girls were soon asleep in the guest rooms. Bella sat on the living room couch, her eyes swollen red. "Nathan's gone for good." She clutched a mug of hot tea, her hands trembling. "He racked up over $3 million in loan shark debt. They said they'd take the kids as collateral." I was silent for a moment. Then I said, "You can stay here for now, but under 2 conditions." Bella suddenly looked up, a flicker of hope in her eyes. "First," I said, "the children must go to school like normal. Second, you need to find a job, even if it's something basic." Her face shifted. I could go work at that preschool your friend runs." "You wouldn't be helping my friend," I said, looking her straight in the eyes. "You'd be helping yourself. Bella, you're 30. It's time to grow up." She lowered her head. The steam rising from her tea blurred her expression. The first few days went smoothly. Bella took the kids to a nearby school every morning and tried to help out with chores afterward. But things fell apart on a Friday night. Ethan was away on a field assignment, and I returned early from a military wives meeting. When I pushed open the bedroom door, I found Bella standing at my vanity, holding the jade bracelet Ethan's grandmother had given me. "I was just looking," she stammered, hastily hiding it behind her back. I stepped in and locked the door behind me. "Put it down." Bella's face went from red to white. She suddenly burst out, wrenching herself free. "Why do you get everything good? That bracelet should have been mine. Ethan should have been mine. The good life should have been mine." "You were the one who gave up on Ethan," I said calmly. Bella screamed as if I'd stabbed her. "Don't act so smug. You just got lucky and married well." I looked at her twisted expression and felt an overwhelming fatigue. In both this life and the last, she always believed others' happiness was just dumb luck, never once seeing her own flaws. "I'll have someone take you to the relocation apartment in the suburbs tomorrow," I said, turning toward the door. I'll send money for the kids every month until they're grown. Bella suddenly lunged at me, grabbing my bag. Where's the money? I know you have cash. We struggled, and the jade bracelet dropped onto the carpet with a soft thud. Ethan's mother rushed in at the noise. Only then did Bella let go, panting heavily and glaring at me. I'm fine, I said as I smoothed down my disheveled hair. Bella's moving out tomorrow. That night, I spoke to Ethan on the phone. He was quiet for a while. Want me to send someone? No, I replied, watching our twins sleeping peacefully. Just rent her a place. Send the support regularly, but don't let her come into the compound again. The next day, Bella and her daughters were relocated to a 2-bedroom apartment in the southern suburbs. It had simple furnishings, enough for a decent life. I transferred 30,000 yuan into her account to get started. A social worker would check in weekly to make sure the children were cared for. As I saw them off, I said, if school ever gets disrupted, I'll apply for guardianship. Bella glared at me with hatred, but just as the car door closed, her eyes welled with tears. 3 months later, the social worker reported Bella had taken a job as a cashier at a supermarket, and the children were attending school regularly. 6 months after that, I heard she'd started taking night classes in accounting. When Ethan's promotion order came down, the house filled with people offering congratulations. Deputy Commander Zhao personally announced his appointment as Chief of Staff for a regional military command, along with his promotion to Brigadier General. Hannah deserves a lot of credit, the old general joked warmly. Every report from Chief Ethan is so solid. I hear you've had a hand in it. Amid the kind laughter, I looked out the window. The spring sunlight lit up the crabapple tree we had just planted in the yard. Ethan quietly slipped his hand into mine. What are you thinking about? Fate, I said, squeezing his warm palm in return. And how life doesn't give us what-ifs, only results. He leaned close, whispering with a smile, then I think our result turned out pretty well. I glanced at the twin babies babbling in their stroller, the elders chatting in the living room, and finally the family photo on the bookshelf. Ethan in his general's uniform, me holding the kids, and Ethan's mother smiling kindly behind us. Yes, I whispered. It turned out beautifully. Many years later, on Qingming Festival, I drove alone to the cemetery on the outskirts of the city. In the trunk were 2 bouquets of white chrysanthemums, one for my father, one for my mother. Little Tang and little Zhou were in elementary school by then. Today, they were with Ethan, visiting the military museum. The spring breeze stirred the fresh green willow branches as I stepped into the quiet memorial park. There weren't many people in the cemetery. I made my way through the familiar path to my parents' tombstone, only to stop short. Bella was kneeling there, her shoulders trembling slightly. She looked a little heavier than the last time we met, dressed in a plain gray coat with her hair tied back casually. When she heard footsteps, she turned around in alarm. Her face was streaked with tears. I didn't know you'd come today, she stammered, hurriedly wiping her face with her sleeve. I come every year at this time. I placed the flowers down and looked at the offerings she'd brought. A few apples and a pack of cigarettes. Dad had loved to smoke when he was alive. Bella stood up and I noticed the mud on the knees of her pants. She looked older now. There were fine lines at the corners of her eyes, but the bitterness that once lived in her gaze was gone. How are the kids? I broke the silence. Tina got into the teacher's college, she said quietly. The others are doing okay too, thanks to the education fund you've been sending. I nodded. Over the years, I'd made sure tuition was paid for all 5 of my nieces, but I never gave Bella cash directly. I'd heard she worked at a supermarket during the day and did bookkeeping at night, raising the kids on her own. She reached into her bag and pulled out a plastic bag. I knitted these for the kids. I'm not very good at it, but it's real wool. I took the bag. Inside were 2 tiny sweaters, one pink and one blue. The stitching was uneven, but it was clear she'd put effort into them. Thanks, I said, a little surprised. I didn't know you could knit. I learned in night school, she muttered, rubbing her rough fingertips. I also do some hand sewing for a clothing factory now, just to make ends meet. Sunlight broke through the clouds and lit up my parents' headstone. We stood side by side in silence for a while. Hannah, Bella said suddenly, I'm sorry. A breeze rustled the chrysanthemums on the grave, making their petals tremble. Back at the birthday banquet years ago, her voice caught in her throat, I completely lost my mind. I took a deep breath. Since my second chance at life, this was the first time either of us had openly acknowledged that bloody night. It's in the past now, I said, looking at the photos of our parents on the tombstone. How's your life these days? It's okay, she said with a strained smile. Tina's going to graduate next year and start working. Things feel a little more hopeful. She paused, then added, They caught Luke last year. He was working as a thug in a casino in Macau. I didn't comment. In the distance, someone was crying softly over a grave. You were right, Bella said. Just picking the right person isn't enough. You have to be strong yourself. I turned to her and saw clarity in her eyes. The years had smoothed away the chaos and left something real behind. The kids can come visit sometime, I said. Tang and Joe haven't met their cousins yet. Her eyes lit up, but dimmed just as quickly. It's better if we don't go to the compound. It's not appropriate. I have a small apartment in the city. I handed her a business card. That's the address and phone number. She took it, her fingers trembling. Thank you. Really, thank you. We left the cemetery, one after the other. Parked beside my car was an old electric scooter. In the front basket sat a supermarket employee cap, probably Bella's. I'm off, she said, clumsily climbing onto the scooter. If they don't like the sweaters, don't feel bad about not using them. Bella, I called out as she started to leave. Next Wednesday is Tang's birthday. She froze for a second, then nodded earnestly. I'll remember. On the drive back, Ethan called. In the background, I could hear the kids chattering excitedly, their voices overlapping. Mom? Tang's voice came through clearly as she grabbed the phone. Dad said we get to ride a real tank. It's a tour of a tank, sweetie, I said, laughing. Ethan chuckled and corrected them. We're just visiting the tank exhibit tonight. So, what do you want for dinner? I'll cook, I said. How about hot pot? It's still a bit chilly out. After hanging up, I glanced at the plastic bag on the passenger seat, pulled out the blue sweater, and noticed a small tag sewn inside the collar. The embroidery, uneven and crooked, read, Peace and Joy. The same words were etched on the jade bracelet Ethan's mother had given me years ago. When I got home, Ethan was in the kitchen slicing lamb for the hot pot. The twins were nearby, kneading dough like tiny chefs. As soon as she saw me, Tang ran over, proudly holding a lumpy mass in her hands. Mom, look, I made a tank. Wash your hands first, I said, laughing as I dodged her flour-covered fingers. Where's Dad? In the kitchen, Joe mumbled, not even lifting his head as he molded his own dough tank. Ethan wore an apron and was focused on chopping scallions. At 35, he looked even more grounded and charming than the day we first met. The golden star on his epaulette gleamed under the kitchen light. You're back, he said with a soft smile. Was it crowded at the cemetery? Not too bad. I set my bag down, hesitated a moment, then added, I ran into Bella. Ethan paused for just a second. How is she? She's changed, I said, taking out the 2 little sweaters. She even knitted these for the kids. He picked one up and examined it. His expression softened. The stitches are pretty solid. After dinner, once the kids were asleep, Ethan and I sat on the balcony with cups of tea. The April night sky was unusually clear, with a few stars flickering above us. She said Luke was arrested, I said suddenly. Ethan nodded. I heard. It wasn't just debt, there were fraud charges too. He looked at peace with the news. I sipped my tea. She also said, life isn't just about picking the right person. Ethan laughed. That sounds like something you'd say. I did say it. I leaned against his shoulder. What if I'd chosen Luke back then? He thought for a moment. You'd have had a better life than Bella, but not better than now. Why? Because you're capable. He playfully pinched my nose. And someone like Luke doesn't deserve that. I smiled, then suddenly remembered something. Oh, Tang's birthday. Let's invite her cousins. Good idea, Ethan agreed right away. And we can give Bella the key to the apartment we're not using. It's close to the kids' school. I looked at him, surprised. That apartment had always been in the back of my mind for Bella, but I hadn't told him yet. What? He raised an eyebrow. You think I didn't notice you've been supporting her kids all these years? Moonlight bathed us in a quiet, gentle glow. I thought of the final moment before my rebirth. Bella's twisted face. The glint of a knife. Of our first encounter in this life, when she proudly declared it was her turn to marry a rich man. Of all the envy, the resentment, the struggle she had waded through to get to the calmness of today. Life truly isn't a simple multiple-choice question. With the same starting point and the same opportunities, Bella and I had walked two completely different paths.